Hi, and welcome to an episode of the JetRails podcast. I'm Robert, your host. Today, we're going to be talking about allowing shoppers to personalize their own shopping experience. In other episodes, we've touched on things that relate to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and ways for shoppers to be presented with products and information that are going to stand out to them based upon what a computer thinks. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how users can actually, Mad Lib style in some ways, they can design their own adventure through the shopping experience a bit. And with me, I've got Gen, who's going to be sharing insights from his personal experience. He's running the pre-hook team. And Gen, with no further ado, would you do the honors of introducing yourself?
Yeah. Hey, Robert. Thanks so much for having me. Just to be clear, it's me and my two co-founders who are working on Pre-Hook, which is an interactive quiz builder for Shopify merchants. And exactly like what you're talking about, we were just looking for a way to help merchants have a more interactive experience in a way to capture the key insights that you might get when you're shopping in person. And I think this has been magnified even more when you consider what's going on with the pandemic and the pullback of in-person shopping. And all of a sudden, the people on the site, I think skincare is a great example where you want to be able to serve the problems of the customer, but the gap to understanding what those problems are is widening and is hard to understand. And so that's how we the problem that we're trying to solve with Pre-Hook.
So you're telling me that the artificial intelligence doesn't know whether I have sensitive skin or dry skin or oily skin or whatever else, right?
Maybe. I was actually just looking, Klaviyo has a new recommendation engine, which I think is really cool based on, products that you've purchased, products that you've shopped or looked at. But there are certain ways in which you can certainly increase the likelihood that you're getting the right product to the right person.
Yeah, and by that point, you've already had to really engage in the shopping experience to some level and spend, as a shopper, a good amount of time narrowing down versus maybe, a more interactive experience. So I think that that's particularly interesting. But I always love to ask our guests, as one of the co-founders of Pre-Hook, how did the company get its name? Was that a big challenge? Did everyone sit down for some beers and a couple of cases later, that's what you came to? How did it come together?
Yeah. So at the time, the two co-founders I worked with at our previous company, where we were the early team of Jungle Scout, which is an Amazon product research tool to help people find products to sell on Amazon. So we're very, very close. We've worked together for 4 years. And the Pre-Hook part came, I think I was actually just reading Russell Brunson's book at the time, Traffic Secrets. I'm a big fan of his, I think, in the way that he distills down what's really most important and kind of finds a narrative. And so one of the frameworks that he was talking about was hook, story, offer, in the way of social media, everybody's scrolling. You need to find a way to throw different hooks, different ways to get people to stop, learn about what you're offering and why they should even care. And so I think with that in the back of my mind, in terms of all right, so you have different hooks, and that's really what these e-commerce merchants are looking to get some traction or attention with, what comes before that. And, hence Pre-Hook. So the other stipulation, of course, is that I thought a .com is important, and these days those are getting fewer
and far to come by,
more and more expensive. So I was like, okay, we'll start with that, because ultimately in the end, it's not necessarily going to make or break. It was just something to start with, and then we are starting as well on the Shopify App Store, and in some sense, that's where branding visually or with name might be even less important than the actual benefits that your product offers.
That makes sense. I mean, so many tech companies that we all subscribe to, the names don't really equate to very much. So there's something to be said for that. And at the heart of the product that you created, how would you best define it? Is it like a quiz engine? If you were trying to get it into a sentence, what does it actually do?
Yeah, so it's an interactive quiz builder. And it basically is a third-party software. It just helps you create a very simple questionnaire. You as a merchant create the questions, whether it's multiple choice or image or yes, no, or rating. And then you are putting it on your store in whatever design or format that you're looking for. So the quiz, it's like, oh, maybe BuzzFeed made quizzes popular like 5 years ago, or the New York Times. And so there's that element of it, which is like kitschy and maybe a fly-by-night trend. But I think what's more important is the ability for merchants to get direct access and feedback from their customers. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, changes in the, like iOS 14, for example. I just uploaded my iPhone operating system. And we've all seen the headlines probably of Facebook and Apple and their battle over data privacy. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Chrome no longer kind of like having third-party cookies and phasing it out by 2022. And so these are like small parts of the macro picture, which is basically the importance of a merchant to understand their customers and to kind of own the customer data themselves. And so that's called zero-party data. And zero-party data being information that your shoppers or customers are willingly and proactively sharing with you, as opposed to first-party data, which might be what you're getting from a transaction. And that's certainly helpful, what products they purchase, when they purchase, where they might live, and some of these things. But they're all actually historical data. And third party is even worse. Third party is just aggregated first party data. So you don't quite know the recency or validity or accuracy of that data. And so we're trying to help merchants understand or get a channel to have a direct conversation. So in your question, getting back to that, what does it do? It just allows for a conversation, an interactive conversation at scale, capture an email, and then surface the most relevant product based on the answers that the customers give.
And there are some really great historical examples in the e-commerce industry. There are plenty of sites in the automotive industry that are going to ask you, for instance, about the vehicle that you own, because if they have 10,000 or 100,000 SKUs, but only 600 of them are applicable to your vehicle. Do you really want to, if you're shopping for hubcaps, do you want to see hubcaps for 1,000 cars or for your car? I think that there are absolutely, from my experience, use cases where I'm happy to share that kind of first-party data willingly, because it's the best way to get information that's going to be relevant and not bombarded with complete, either irrelevant or just very generalized information and offerings. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another kind of emerging buzzword is personalization. And, everybody's kind of, it's like the holy grail is how do you personalize at scale? And I mean, frankly, you can't. It doesn't necessarily make sense to create segments of one, across your entire customer base or users on the site, visitors. But it's about ramping up the relevance. And the more input that you have, the better the inputs that you have, the greater your ability to create relevant messaging or offers or even visuals, which is more and more important in the e-commerce experience. So yeah, that's where the quiz and gathering the answers, the data. So you're setting the strategy beforehand of, all right, what are the things that matter for us? What are the ways that we're going to create cohorts or segments on the back end and create campaigns around those? Let's ask about those on the website experience, and then kind of like we capture the email and everything, the colorful parameters around the email. And then you're able to increase the relevancy, and therefore the efficacy of these messages is far greater.
Makes sense. I mean, while there's a lot that I think you can individualize to some extent, it really is about segmentation and identifying, you're not making products by and large for one person. There are a few, certainly there are good use cases for actual personalized products, but when we're talking about your average e-commerce website, it's really about matching things up and finding those trends, finding those data points that are going to align really well. So when you're creating one of these quizzes, what's the tone like? Is there something that is going to really appeal more to the shoppers? Is keeping the tone very formal the more common, or do people make it light or funny, or try to loosen things up a little bit and humanize it? What seems to actually happen in the market, and what seems to work?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. I think it really is most important to mirror what the brand voice is, or what the state of the customer is. On the more serious end, a quiz that comes to mind might be Curology, which is an acne medication kind of like that you purchase online. And so that, as you might expect, is very clinical, straightforward. You're asking, what kind of skin problems you have, what skin type, where you live, what your current regimen is. And that's very much to simulate the experience of a medical consultation. And then on the other hand, the other end of the spectrum are the more whimsical, like Dr. Squatch, which is this kind of rowdy brand of soap for men, or Poopery, where it's bathroom sprays with scents. And they have a lot of puns and witty copywriting in their quiz. So that I think is on brand for them, and that makes sense. What I find, in my opinion, that might not work, and I think the data might back this up, is just including superfluous questions that are kind of filler or meant to be funny, but really don't add any value. So examples might be like, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Or, what season are you? Or these things where, sure, you can make a connection that, they're your fragrance brand, and it's, they say that they're a lion, that they have they're looking for musky or whatever, who knows? But that is a little bit of a stretch. And so to me, I think it doesn't.
You risk alienating some of the people filling out this quiz, and the whole goal is to really stay on point with them. So
exactly. But even worse than alienating is you actually get drop off. So Typeform had a really interesting study. They obviously have millions of data points. And as you might imagine, for every additional question in a quiz, you're going to get drop off. So do you really want to sacrifice, 3% of the completion rate to ask what flavor, what animal you are, what flavor you are, what princess you are?
Yeah. Oh, KISS method, keep it simple.
Exactly. Totally agree.
I think for surveys in general, outside of thinking of quizzes specifically, the more questions you ask, the more likely that you're going to see that drop off, that people are just going to either before they start because they see it's too darn long, or once they start because they've just had enough, they're going to hit the eject button and run away. So that makes as much sense as anything else. Now, thinking about these kinds of quizzes, do you think that for a brand like someone that's selling personal care products, should these be popping up at people? Should these be by invitation through some kind of a button or something else on the site? What's a good way to bring this forward to the shopper in a way that they're going to potentially want to interact with? Do you have to offer them some kind of a coupon or discount or something special to get them to do it? What actually, and do you have any, along with that, I'll make this a really compounded question. Do you have any data on average how many people, what kind of range of percent of people are willing to fill out something like this?
Yeah. Okay. So good question. In terms of where to surface it and the website experience, I'll say that it depends on how important the quiz is to the customer journey. Like, for example, a brand, off the top of my head, a brand like Stitch Fix. So Stitch Fix or Wink, which is a wine brand. They force everybody, whether you sign up and pay or not, to go through the quiz. And the reason is because they're subscription brands. The information that they're gathering up front is super important to the customer experience and making sure that they're sending the right product to the customer. So it's this essentially onboarding questionnaire, they capture the email. So in that sense, every single visitor on the site who is not registered or has not shared an email must go through the quiz. So there it's far more prevalent of a call to action. Another might be, a skincare brand where a quiz is helpful because for skincare, of course, there's a wide variety of SKUs. You want to make sure that the product itself caters to and addresses the skincare needs of that customer. But they also might know what they want and they can search via filters or whatever. So that's super important. Maybe they have it on the upper nav or as a call to action in a menu, but it's not necessarily super important in terms of every customer going through it. But I've also seen a lot, whether it's a paid ad, Facebook ad, you can look in the Facebook ads library, see that a lot of these brands that do have quizzes use the quiz as a landing page, because a quiz by nature piques this curiosity about us as humans to learn more about ourselves. I mean, that's like the favorite subject of everybody, is to learn more about themselves, as self-discovery. And that's what a quiz prompts, is this curiosity.
I happen to think I've discovered enough about myself, but I'll take your point and strike.
Yeah, right. Sure.
I think as a shopper, at least, which, usually I'm thinking about this as an e-commerce, experienced industry person, whatever title we want to bestow on that. But as a shopper, when I walk into certain types of businesses, I'm prepared to share certain information. I walk into, a men's formal wear store, or, suit store, whatever it may be. And I'm going to tell them what I need the items for, if whether I need a tux for, something formal, or I need, I need something more sporty or whatever, for speaking engagements or whatever the case may be. It's going to be a pretty common conversation to be had. You walk in and you kind of know you're going to get a sales rep and they're going to walk you through this. Similar things when you walk into a car dealership. I mean, most of us walk in with some idea of what we want, but we might find out quickly that based on a few parameters that we're going to get pushed towards something, whether that works or not. So I'm with you. I mean, when it comes to skincare and things, I think department store, you walk up to any kind of a makeup or fragrance or whatever counter, or, jewelry counter, they're going to ask some questions and they're going to start pulling you toward whatever case or whatever display that to some extent, we're primed for those conversations. So, logically, I would just want to think that if you ask it in the same way that I'm used to, and this is just a digital conversation, we're going to get to very similar outcomes, maybe better outcomes, because the computer in some cases might be a little bit better trained or, less fallible. As much as I think wonderful things about these sales team members at these retail operations, but you walk into the tire store and they're going to get information about what your vehicle is and how you're using it, not just what it is, and they're going to make some recommendations to you pretty clearly. I think in a lot of cases this is just extending this one step forward and maybe making it more prevalent for businesses that might not have been utilizing this well enough in the first place.
Yeah. I do think that we're going to see a lot more of this, and whether it's called a quiz, a survey, a questionnaire, a consultation, the nomenclature doesn't matter, but the importance of like having that interaction is really important. And it brings up interesting statistics that I've come across in terms of what we as customers are looking for and what we expect as a customer experience buying things online. And that is that we don't want to be treated like a number, or we don't want to receive just mass emails with largely general messaging. We are willing to share. I think it's like 71% of consumers are frustrated when they don't receive a personalized experience. And like 90% are willing to share the information in order to receive a personalized experience. But the gap, and it's kind of known as the customer experience gap, is that marketers aren't necessarily gathering the information and aren't packaging it up to feed it back to customers for that personalized experience. So that's where a lot of the opportunity is, as the marketplace might become more competitive. More products are jumping online just out of necessity with the pandemic, but also with lower barriers to entry. You can order on AliExpress or whatever far easier than it was in the past. The need to understand what your customers are looking for and have that kind of like a relationship per se is going to only get more important.
Yeah, well, and look, sometimes I think especially for certain segments of users, putting this all online is a better experience because they don't like the pressure of the actual salesperson. Like they might like people, but they don't want to feel like now they've taken someone's time and someone's waiting on them and not the next customer and trying to earn a living, get a commission or whatever it may be. Someone's standing over them or watching them from the corner of the store waiting to bounce. Yeah,
For sure.
This is kind of that healthy balance of trying to offer back to that buzzword, this personalized experience, this personalization. But that's the way forward for e-commerce. It's if you want more people to want to shop from your store online, and marketplaces like Amazon are more of a commodity purchase. What you're giving them on your website is a more personalized experience, is a relationship with the brand and more information and more learning experience. And you're pulling all these different things together to have a relationship with the shopper in a way that you don't when you sell to them through Amazon. They're Amazon's customer. They're not yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we've covered a lot of the data collection and, the how and the why. How does it then become actionable, in your opinion, in a good use case, in a proper scenario, where now these quizzes have been filled out by shoppers, whether it's on landing pages or somewhere that's going to be triggered on the website or visited through browsing the site? Is it what's going to be offered to them right then and there as soon as they finish the quiz? Is it what they're going to see the next time they come back to the website and log in? Is it what they're going to be emailed or messaged or remarketed, retargeted through other triggers and mechanisms? Is it all the above? What does, at least in the short term, obviously, I think these things will continue, evolving for a lot of brands, that you have to start somewhere. What's sort of the natural progression in your mind of doing this well?
Yeah. So, I'll bring up a skincare as an example. And I think I do that because skincare might have shifted so much with the pandemic and with this reliance on an in-person experience now going offline, or online.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think how to actually make this data actionable is with the recommendation. Okay, so there's always this expectation of a quid pro quo. I'm going to share information with you. At the end of that experience, you're going to give something to me. And that's what I'm thinking as a customer. So what that exchange is here's some answers to what I'm looking for, maybe my email address or phone number for SMS. And in return, you're going to maybe give me an analysis of my skin. Probably one of the most extensive and cool examples is, I think, Dermatologica, where they basically take a selfie. You take a selfie and then they give you an analysis. That's pretty high tech. That's augmented reality, cool stuff. But it could just be like a self-fulfilling quiz, or I'm just telling you what my skin type is, what my problems are, what I'm looking for. So how to make it actionable is on the recommendation page. I think that some of the skincare brands, Curology is one, or Skin Say as another example, they do a really nice job of basically gathering all of the data, the inputs, and then showing it back, kind of mirroring it on the recommendation page to say, you have dry skin. This is the moisturizer for you. This is, you said that you're worried about black spots or dark spots or clogged pores. These are the products that you need. So it's almost like a reaffirmation of that they understand the problem I have. Here's a solution.
And maybe then, in a more digestible way than just giving them, whether we want to call them search filters or um, layered navigation or faceted search, or there's lots of industry terms and different ways to make these things happen. But it's a more humanistic approach.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great point. But it's also not even just on the recommendation page and the permutation of products that go there, but all of this gets fed to the email service provider. So all of a sudden there are segments in Klaviyo based on what the skin type is, what the problem is. Maybe it's geography, which matters for skin, as an example. But then also on the remarketing, so you're getting the dynamic offering of what your recommended product is, or it's SMS marketing, and that product being whether it's an abandoned cart or whatever, texted. So I think it kind of like in a hub and spoke model of sorts in terms of data, you're gathering everything from the quiz, and then it's informing these marketing campaigns that you're running on different channels, all with that.
As a shopper, historically, I like going into a store where I'm going to have the same person assisting me, because I don't want to go through that entire life story again of what my needs are, whatever's particular. It's kind of like it's nice when someone, becomes a regular at a restaurant or something, again, in normal circumstances,
Yeah.
and someone knows their order. It's a nice feeling. I think I don't think that shoppers want to fill out the same questionnaire or quiz or whatever over and over again. So I think that's probably an important takeaway for merchants. It's, if you're going to do this, do it with the right tech stack, and make sure that it's actionable, and that you're going to make it worth the customer's time, that they're going to feel like this was beneficial. Maybe this is going to go into a drip campaign or something that checks in on them or offers them more advice long term based upon what you now know about them. It doesn't always have to be about making an immediate sale, but building the relationship, being experts in a field, speaking the same language. I think that, that's often what's missing out of so much of the online experience. So that all makes sense. Because different merchants are going to use this different ways, I imagine that it's hard to create some kind of a baseline improvement to conversion rate optimization or customer lifetime value. But that's the end goal here as a merchant. You're not just doing this because it's cool. You're doing this because it's going to improve your bottom line. Do you have any thoughts on what a merchant might be able to expect out of doing this well? Because again, I'm sure that this can range in how it's applied and how it's used, and whether it's really applicable, and how big the audience is, and all sorts of different parameters. They're going to throw things off.
Yeah. So as a caveat, these are anecdotal. I'm not running my own store with a quiz to see a before and after, but I have been interviewing and speaking with people. And on my podcast, I spoke with one woman who, her name is Priya Downs, runs Nudea, which is a bra brand, women's lingerie in the UK. And so she's a quiz, a fit finder, which is very popular in terms of like finding the right fit for a bra. And she has two ways of doing the fit. One is with a old school measuring tape, and one kind of like an online quiz. What was really astounding is that the conversion rate of those that take the quiz to those that don't is basically 10x, she said.
Wow.
So it's about a 3% conversion rate if you just go to the site and purchase. But then if you kind of go through the top of the funnel, either buy the quiz or take the online quiz, she was seeing 30% conversion rate. And I think that's like an astoundingly high rate. I'd be throwing money to get people to take the quiz if that were the case. Another example is Bamboo Earth, which is a skincare brand. And they wrote about it on the Common Thread Collective, which 4x400 is kind of like a holding company of these brands. They're very transparent and helpful with sharing their knowledge and what they're working on. I think that they saw like a 2x increase in conversion rate and a 2.5x increase in average order value of those who take the quiz and go through that whole funnel, and then those that don't. But also more interestingly is that they were, once they had the quiz and had been running it for a while, they ended up seeing more purchases, repeat purchases of those who took the quiz than those that didn't. So that kind of ties in right to the lifetime value, especially I think with skincare brands, a lot of the acquisition cost is front loaded. You might not make a lot of profit margin on that first order, but every subsequent order.
I mean, skincare and related, related types of businesses have often gotten involved in affiliate marketing where a lot of that expense is front loaded, or they're priced in a way where, they're going to basically give away the first product to marketing overhead in order to drive in that first customer, as you were, alluding to. This is pretty natural. So yeah, if you can't get them to come back and buy again or sign up for a subscription or do something else, that's going to be rough. And if you don't really figure out how to pair them with the right product, you're dead in the water. Mm-hmm. You're never going to get them to come back. So, you give the customer the wrong product, they're not going to think very much of it. They're not going to come back 3 more times and try 3 other things. So there's definitely, look, I think even for technology purchases that people don't always think about it, but in order to figure out which model of whatever that device is that you really need, understanding the actual use case and taking people through it. A lot of us spend a long time trying to compare and read descriptions and figure out what's actually different about these products and figure out exactly which one is going to most closely align with what we want. And it's not always something that you can surface just through attribute filtering and such. And I think that there's a lot of that, talking more about the actual use case and not just about the specs that comes together through these sorts of quizzes, and it really helps the shopper because it really is that different format to it. You've mentioned some really great examples and some really great data sets. Are there any other merchants that really come to mind that you think are doing some of this really well? Anyone else that you think it should really be put under the microscope because they're getting it right?
Yeah, for sure. So one I think that's interesting is Billy. Are you familiar with Billy, the women's razor?
No, not particularly, but
all right. Well, you had a beard. I wasn't sure if you did.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Billy is, I think the URL is BILLIE. And they do women's razors. I think they're owned by Procter & Gamble or Unilever, but kind of like a large CPG brand. And what's really interesting is they have a relatively small set of items, and they're making their money on, or subscription is very important to them. And they have a quiz, and it's a very simple, I think it's like 3 steps. And it's basically, what color do you like? How often do you shave? And then they lead naturally into upsell products, which it might be the shaving cream or additional razors or something. And then a checkout. And it's a really slick quiz. It's visually very nice. It looks great. And then it's a little bit of a whimsical. We were talking about like how on brand versus serious it has to be. It's a very clean quiz. And I don't know numbers on this, but what I do like is that the upsell is just so naturally ingrained in the process that I have to expect that people that go through this, as opposed to add directly to cart, have a higher average order value in aggregate because they're just clicking, yeah, I probably will use new razors. And what I love about it also is that it really just naturally gets people into a subscription. So, you click, yeah, you shave, daily or weekly, you're going to get shipment more often than if you shave every month. But regardless, you're going to get fed into a subscription model.
Yeah. That works with the way my brain works. I like stuff like that. And I mean, the benefit is here that it's a tech stack. So you get to test and measure, you get to see what the actual lift is or lack thereof. If for some reason you've got a customer set that really just wants to be left alone, knows what they want, and whatever the case is, hey, look, it happens. But if I'm buying mattresses or something, I want them to ask me if I sleep on my side or my back or my stomach. I want that kind of, am I hot? Am I cold? Tell me what I want. I don't want to go and buy a mattress and not be happy and return it, or I don't want to be bothered with that.
For sure.
Be the right item the first time. They're also similar in so many ways, right? But at least let me mentally, even if it's placebo, let me feel good about it. So let me feel like I did this, I got this purchase right.
Totally. And $1,000, like you really do want it right. Helix Sleep is a mattress brand that has a really nice quiz and kind of like asks you, all right, Robert, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? Who's sleeping on the bed? What size bed do you want? And then, they might only have 5 different options, but it kind of guides you to it and it reinforces why they recommended it.
Yeah. Well, again, this has been a fun one for me because I think that so much of this, and I'm sure for our listeners, it just clicks. It makes sense. I think that you're onto something in that, it's not that we haven't seen some of this before, but we're going to see more of it, especially as so many brands are seeing so much growth online versus some of their other more traditional offline shopping channels. And so, hopefully we'll see more of it because as consumers, I think it's just good.
Yeah.
There's not a lot here for me to question. You mentioned your podcast. If anyone wants to go check that out, what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah, it's Cart Overflow, cartoverflow.com. We speak weekly with people doing cool things in the e-commerce marketing world, operators, tech partners, agencies. And so it's been really cool in terms of like connecting with the people, learning from them and sharing those lessons. So otherwise, my name is Gen, Gen. Email me at gen@prehook.com and or just check out what we're doing, prehook.com.
Yeah, I'm sure if anybody sees a cool survey, let Gen know. He seems to have the best list of these running. So let's keep that going. Any final words before we wrap up?
Final words. I think whether it is a quiz or it's a questionnaire or a survey or whatever the mechanism is, it could be support tickets or conversations with the sales team. I think the underlying important lesson is how the conduit with customers to have those conversations, I think is super enlightening. And I'm learning this myself as I'm building this brand and product to have those customer insights, to actually not kind of build in the void and market in a void. And I think that's where we're trying to help out. But I think it's whatever the tactic or channel is, the upside is just infinite.
Yeah. I think that everyone listening is going to agree that if you want to get to the right endpoint, you have to ask the right questions. Right?
Yeah.
JetRails is a web host. You don't go to our website and pick a hosting plan. That we speak to every single merchant that we support and we size them out. We identify what are their challenges, what are their needs, and we architect around it. That we know it's a working model, and we know that it leaves us with really, really great retention, really great, customer feedback. And I think, the more that we can see more of these businesses that are really being pulled farther and farther online, being able to take those kind of steps and build those kinds of relationships, even if it's for, a $20 product, they might not be in a position to have thousands of people, calling in and going through this, nor do the shoppers necessarily want to have, it's not that detailed a purchase. But finding this kind of alignment, it's really great. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. To our guests, we're always really thankful for your time and for your expertise. I hope we get to do this again sometime. For our listeners, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy selling out there.